Chair. Commissioner McCartney, I hope you know I have the highest regard for you and your colleagues at the AFP for your service to our country, but I do have to ask some questions about the Commissioner Kershaw's absence from these hearings this evening. When were the travel arrangements for Commissioner Kershaw's trip first finalised?
I think it's fair to say, Senator, this trip has been in planning for over 6 months. I think the travel arrangements were approved by the attorney, and we only became aware of the spillover 2 weeks ago, and by that stage formal arrangements had been put in place for the visit, Senator.
Right. So, as you say in the letter to the committee, which I believe we received yesterday and is dated as yesterday, the trip has been in planning for some time. You've known about the estimate spillover for 2 weeks. Why did you only notify the committee 1 day before you were set to appear that the Commissioner was not going to be available to appear?
Senator, I'm unaware why that occurred. If that's a mistake, well, I'll take ownership of that mistake, Senator. I apologise.
I mean, the opportunity to tell us that the Chief Commissioner was not available was when you first received the invitation and knew that he wouldn't be available. When was the article which appeared in the Australian newspaper briefed? It appeared online at 9:30 on Sunday night. When was that first briefed?
Listen, I'd have to take that on with Senator.
Okay, there's probably some people in the room who could assist you with that, rather than you taking on notice and coming back later.
Sure.
In that article, it said, Mr Kershaw, who will miss the AFP Senate Estimates Inquiry spillover session on Tuesday, and then it goes on to quote him. Why was the media informed that the AFP Commissioner would not be appearing before the committee was informed?
Yeah, I note your point, Senator. I'm unsure why that occurred.
Because I think most committee members, certainly me, only learned that he wouldn't be here when that article was published and were only subsequently formally informed by the AFP in a letter.
Sure.
I'll move on to my substantive questions now. If I have time, I'll come back to the Chinese agreements, which you referenced in your opening statement. But I just flag for the benefit of colleagues that if the AFP is not able to answer questions today as a result of the Commissioner's absence, then I reserve the right with other colleagues to request a further spillover of the AFP so that the matters can be resolved. For transparency, I wrote to the AFP last week advising generally the topics of questions that I'd be asking. I've circulated that to the Secretariat. If the Secretariat could table that as a document with the Chair's consent, I'd be grateful, just for transparency. These questions relate to the NZYQ cohort. How many individuals have now been released from immigration detention following the High Court's decision?
What I might do, Senator, is pass to Deputy Commissioner Kirsty Schofield, who can answer some of your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Kirsty Schofield, Deputy Commissioner for Crime. In answer to your question, Senator, there were 3 people that were remanded in custody in regards to this cohort. They have all been released.
Okay, but I think that I'm talking about the total as well. So since the decision in November last year, it's been widely reported in the media as about 149. Is there an update to that figure, or is it still 149?
There's 152 that are now included in the cohort.
Thank you. That's helpful. Of those 152, how many have been charged with a Commonwealth offence at any point?
There's been 10 people charged with a Commonwealth offence.
And those 10 who were charged with a Commonwealth offence, they are all breaching visa conditions, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. How many have been charged with a state or territory offence?
The ABF is responsible for maintaining the data provided to them from states and territories in regards to their interactions with the cohort. The AFP is privy to some of that, but we don't have accurate or up-to-date data on that. So if I could suggest that question directed to the ABF.
Well, we'll be asking similar questions to ABF when they appear at their spillover next week. But I had understood that the AFP was part of this very tight-knit Operation Aegis operation, which would presumably be exactly the place where this information would be shared. So what is your most up-to-date understanding of that number?
Senator, if I could just maybe answer the question about the construct of Aegis. The AFP is part of Task Force Aegis, but we're also part of the Law Enforcement Cooperation Group, which is led by the ABF. It commenced on the 10th of November following the High Court decision, and it was developed in a way to share information between the Commonwealth agencies and the states and territories. That's it. That's the forum in which information is shared.
This is not really relevant to my question. I do understand that. As you say yourself, it's designed to facilitate cooperation between state and federal agencies. Presumably one of those things is state offences, which this cohort is charged with. So what is your up-to-date understanding with the number of state or territory offences that have been committed?
Senator, I don't have up-to-date information. As I said, that information is held and maintained by the ABF.
Okay. If you could take that on notice, I would be grateful. Of all of the NZYQ affected cohort, how many in total are currently in custody?
I can only reply to you on the AFP Commonwealth charges for visa breaches, which none of them are now remanded in custody.
None of them are. How many were recently in custody but no longer in custody?
There was 3 people that remanded in custody that have since been released.
Okay. And those are the people that were presumably charged with those visa breaches, and those charges can no longer be pursued because the visa on which they were released was legally faulty, is that right?
That's correct.
Of those 3 people, how many visa breaches had they each been accused of?
I've got the table. You just bear with me. I don't plan to go through each of them.
I don't need the details, just the numbers.
The numbers, they were predominantly charged with breach of curfew, although there was a few that were failed to report. They're a mixture of the two. They've all been charged with at least one of those offences.
So, Senator, just to confirm, you're talking about the ones that were on remand or the whole 10?
At this stage, I'm just asking about the 3 who are in custody.
Okay.
I assume the reason that they are in custody is it was not only one occasion or it was a more serious breach.
You're correct, Senator. It was for more than one offence.
Right. And so how many offences had each of those 3 people been charged with?
Okay, so in regards to, I'm not going to give out details of names, but just to summarise, in regards to one of the persons that was remanded in custody, 1, 2, 3, there was 5 offences for that one person. Another one had 10 curfew breaches, and the third one had 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
Right. So that's an extraordinary number of breaches for those individuals. That's serious recidivism and disregard for the conditions under which they were released and applied to them. Have any of those 3 people also been charged with a state or territory offence?
I don't have that information available to me, but not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge?
No.
Okay. If that's not right, if you could clarify, I would be grateful. I'll stick to my questions for now just to the ones who breached Commonwealth offences, given that you've said you don't have a state of knowledge about the state offences. Of those 10 who breached conditions, can you provide a breakdown of where they are by state and territory? No further information than that, but just state and territory.
There's 4 from Victoria.
Thank you.
2 from New South Wales.
Yep.
3 from WA.
Yep.
That doesn't up to 10, does it?
No, that's not quite there. That's 9.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Queensland.
4 from Victoria. 1, 2 from New South Wales. 1, 2, 3. And 1 from Queensland.
1 from Queensland. That document that you're reading from, can that be tabled?
Yes, it can.
Thank you. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Sorry, we'll just have to clarify. I think it's got
got
names and details on it.
Okay, yeah, I don't want names. If names can be redacted, then that would be helpful, and I'd be happy to accept
Can we
it.
take that one on notice and provide it
Thank
to
you.
you without the names?
That'd be helpful. I previously asked about the number from the cohort of 149, now the cohort of 152, who'd been released without electronic monitoring. I think it was either you or Border Force who told me that there were 36 individuals who were released who now do not have electronic monitoring. To your knowledge, is it still 36 individuals without electronic monitoring?
The role of the AFP is to respond to reports of crime. The monitoring of the cohort for visa conditions lies with Home Affairs and ABF, and that question is best directed to those agencies.
Sure, but as you said, the 10 people who you have charged with crimes, were charged with breaching their visa conditions,
Yes.
you must have a state of knowledge about the monitoring of them. You're saying you don't know how many are in the community without electronic monitoring?
Can I just clarify, Senator, if you're talking about the 10 that the AFP
No,
has
the
charged?
total now 152 individuals. It's been reported 36 of them don't have electronic monitoring. How many lack electronic monitoring today?
I can only talk to the matters the AFP has been involved in, which is the reports of the breaches of the visa conditions.
Okay. Of the 10 people who've been charged with breaching their visa conditions, were any of them not wearing an electronic bracelet?
Can I take that question on notice?
Yes, but I mean, these are matters that I wrote to you to say that I was going to raise, so I'd be grateful.
We'll try and get the answer before the end of this hearing.
I would be grateful for that, thank you. It stands to reason that it will be much easier to identify a breach of curfew for an electronically monitored person than someone who is not electronically monitored, although even those without electronic monitoring still have obligations to report, depending on their circumstances. So I'm very interested to know whether any of those people, at least 36, have been charged with breaching their visa conditions. How many of the 7 murderers released from detention have been charged with breaching their visa conditions?
I'm not going to go into the criminal history of the people that have been charged.
Why not?
It's a privacy issue. It's not appropriate to disclose.
I'm not asking you to name them. It's just the relevant offence that they've committed. You just won't identify them in any way.
Yeah, I think as a matter of process, we don't normally reveal criminal history, Senator.
Well, hang on. You put out a media release stating the criminal history of the people who were charged. Sometimes you give their age, sometimes you give their nationality. I mean, you give a lot of detail in the information you provide.
I don't believe we give the criminal history in the media release.
Okay. Well, do you think the Australian people have a right to know whether any of the murderers out in the community have also breached their visa conditions?
No, I can understand your question, but as a matter of protocol and process, we don't reveal the criminal histories of people that we may charge in relation to these circumstances.
Well, that's extraordinary because I think the community does have a right to know. All of this cohort is of concern, but some are of higher concern due to the nature of the offences they committed. The government has not applied for a single preventive detention order. The ones who breached their visa conditions are now walking free despite breaching their visa conditions, and we don't know if any of those are former murderers or charged with murder.
Senator, I can understand your concern and understand your frustration, but as I said, as a matter of process, we don't...
Well, you're making a public interest immunity claim?
Sorry?
Are you making a public interest immunity claim?
Senator Patterson, are you... The Commissioner is talking... Sorry. The Commissioner is giving you a pretty robust answer on a number of matters that you've asked for, but to push on something that may actually impact a current investigation and current charges is not something that this committee or any committee would usually insist on. Are you... do you want to rephrase your question, perhaps?
No, I don't want to, Chair, because as we've just heard, there are no current charges. All of these people have been let off because the visas they were issued were invalid. There are no pending court matters in relation to these 10 people. As you know, and as you say in your opening statement, the only valid reason for not answering a question of a Senate committee is a public interest immunity claim.
I think it's extraordinary that you would insist on it. But...
As a matter of process, we don't provide that information, Senator, but let me take that on notice.
Thank you. Thank you. I would be grateful for that. So, presumably you also can't answer how many of the sex offenders have been charged with breaching their visa conditions?
Correct.
Okay. There's a number of matters to be considered by the High Court soon in relation to other detainees with slightly different circumstances to the NZYQ cohort. For example, the AF17 case. Has the AFP been advised about how many individuals could be affected by these rulings?
No, we haven't.
How can you prepare, as the government says it is, if you don't know how many people could be affected by these pending rulings?
The AFP will position ourselves to respond to a very complex and situation that's unfolding quickly. We will respond accordingly.
The Solicitor General told the High Court that up to 340 people could have been affected by the NZYQ case. as we know, there's 152 who have been released. So at least on his evidence, there's potentially another 200 people who could be, or almost 200 people who could be released. Obviously, if it's 200 or if it's 5 is a very different issue for the AFP and your partners to be prepared to monitor them. So your evidence is the government has provided you no advice about the potential size of this cohort?
No, I think it's fair to say there have been ongoing discussions, Senator, but it's important to note what our role is in relation to these matters. It's not, the AFP's role is not to monitor, it's to enforce breaches. And again, in terms of the scenarios that might unfold, we'll pivot in terms of what those scenarios are, but it wouldn't be the position that AFP have responsibility monitoring any other persons that are released from detention.
Well, hang on, we just heard
One
about...
more question, Senator.
Thanks, Chair. We just heard about the cooperation through Operation Aegis and the partnership you have with state and federal state police and the ABF. It is Operation Aegis which is supposed to be protecting the community from the risk posed by these detainees. There is potentially another large cohort of detainees about to be released, and you don't know how many that might be.
There's ongoing discussions, and ongoing productive discussions. But again, ultimately, if they are released, it wouldn't be our role to monitor those individuals.
Why were you given extra funding then to deal with this cohort?
Senator Patterson, Senator, sorry, I said one last question, and then I'm sharing the call, because we only have a short period of time tonight. Senator